According to the famous Pew Research Center for General Statistics, the number of Internet users worldwide in 1995 was around 50 million users, most of whom were institutions in industrialized countries. However, just 20 years later, by 2015, the number of Internet users had surpassed 3.5 billion. 8 more years passed, and by the end of 2023, the number of Internet users reached 5.3 billion. So, what could happen if the Internet were to be cut off from the entire world? Welcome, but before we start, if you are new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe and activate the bell so you receive our videos firsthand. First of all, before we answer the question, we need to ask another question. Can the Internet really be cut off from the entire world someday? Could a major catastrophe, like a large earthquake or a nuclear war, God forbid, cause the Internet to be cut off from the entire world? The truth is, as long as the Earth is continuing, the Internet will continue. First, the Internet is not a fad that the world will get tired of one day. The Internet now is like water and electricity. Relying on it has become essential in all aspects of modern life. Even if someone tried to stop the Internet globally through intentional sabotage, they wouldn't be able to unless something like a giant meteor strike, like the one that hit the dinosaurs, happened. In that case, it wouldn't matter much if there was no Internet because we probably wouldn't be here. But as we said, if any catastrophe happens and Earth continues, the Internet will continue normally. This is due to the Internet's infrastructure, the way Internet cables are laid out, the distribution of servers worldwide, and the overall concept of how the Internet works. The Internet does not rely on one device, nor 10, nor even 1,000. It is a network spread across the entire globe and even exists in space through satellites. So, a country could ban some websites or services, or completely stop the Internet within its borders, but that would still be a matter concerning its borders alone. Also, major outages could occur, cutting off the Internet in a few countries, not just one, and this has happened more than once. Perhaps the most famous incident was in 2008 when a major submarine cable was cut, disrupting the Internet in several countries in the Indian subcontinent. However, in the end, these were all outages, and things got fixed eventually and moved on well. All of the above tells us that our question is purely hypothetical and imaginary, so that no one should worry. The Internet will continue, slums will continue, and midnight will continue, God willing. So, let's assume there is a button that, if pressed, would cut off the Internet globally. According to researchers, if the Internet were cut off globally for a week, some minor economic disasters would occur and pass. Some institutions and companies might lose billions of dollars, especially if they are entirely dependent on the Internet, like Meta, Google, Amazon, and others. However, all institutions, regardless of their activity in the economy or trade or even those working in security, would all suffer losses. But in the end, everyone would be able to recover and continue, and the world would not end and be destroyed if it lived without the Internet for a week. The problem arises if it lasts longer than that. The most affected group would be Internet addicts. This group has become so connected to the Internet that it has reached a pathological state. The absence of the Internet would have a huge impact on this group as they lose their accustomed means of communication, whether through social media or online games or anything that requires the Internet. The psychological damage would be significant, and researchers say there would be reports of people wanting to end their lives because the Internet is their whole life, and its absence would mean a huge void that many could not bear. If we get serious and talk about the impact of the Internet's absence on service sectors in general, we find that, for example, the transport sector would be more disrupted. Note that the transport sector alone could cause complete paralysis in the entire world. Transport is what gets people to their jobs and allows them to run their affairs. Since the Internet has heavily entered the transport sector, the first thing that would happen is that all self-driving cars and electric vehicles would stop. Some researchers even say that any type of vehicle would struggle. This is because all traffic, navigation, and fuel systems currently rely on digital and Internet systems. For example, electronic gates at city entrances wouldn't open without the Internet, and within cities, the majority of traffic lights wouldn't work. This would cause accidents and traffic congestion everywhere, affecting the whole world. Next, we come to another type of transport, airplanes. Airplanes now rely almost entirely on Internet-linked navigation systems. So if the Internet were completely cut off, planes would likely not take off. especially since one of the most critical phases of flights is the logistical preparations, which depend on mechanisms that use the internet to connect their devices. If the internet is down, this capability would be entirely paralyzed. In short, without the internet, there would be no preparations, and airports would be in chaos. It's not just about the aspects of airports that rely on the internet. For example, there are issues like bookings, weather information, landing and takeoff data, baggage weight. Everything gets updated continuously and is tracked by transport and tourism companies. The entire world is interconnected through the internet in a continuous data exchange. It wouldn't be feasible to suddenly revert to the era of faxes, regular phones, and ordinary messages to coordinate something like an airport. Besides, the old infrastructure no longer exists, and the current era's requirements, increased population, increased flights, and the number of airplanes cannot cope with old speeds. By choosing something related to aviation, flight schedules, company profits, hotels, and all that would revert to the 80s, and we left the 80s half a century ago. As for e-commerce, it explains itself. Anyone dependent on the internet for business and trade would disappear entirely from the global financial and economic market, from those working on YouTube like us to the largest companies like Meta and Amazon. This could lead to the collapse of the economies of the strongest countries due to the end of the era of e-commerce, especially when it is known that a country like the United States relies on the digital economy for 33% of its GDP. Next, we move on to something the global financial system relies on: banks. Remember the beginning of the crisis between Ukraine and Russia? What was the West threatening Russia with? If any of you were following the events, you surely heard the term SWIFT system. The SWIFT system is simply a global system for bank transfers between countries, and the West was threatening to deprive Russia of using this system, thus preventing it from selling and buying. So, imagine if the SWIFT system were shut down globally, not just for Russia. There would undoubtedly be a complete collapse of the global economy. And you only need to know that if the internet were cut off globally for one day, a country like the United States would lose about $11 billion. That's it. Who made it this far? Those who did are the best. Give us a like before you leave so we know how many people reached the end. And don't forget, if you have a question in the middle of the night, write it in the comments under the video so we can answer it.